let's get started. The ego versus the higher self. Navigating success without losing your roots. So some of us have a problem with this. We struggle with dealing with success, with in navigating that success without losing your roots. That involves a couple things. It involves understanding and balancing the roles of the ego and the higher self. So, today I have this guide to help you differentiate between these two aspects of yourself and maintain your authenticity as you achieve success. So, we got to start with understanding the ego and the higher self. Like, what are we even talking about? So, the ego, definition of the ego. It's a part of your psyche that's driven by self preservation and personal identity. It's often fueled by fear, some doubts, a sense of scarcity, leading to reactions like fear, anger, and competition. Okay. So it is a part of yourself that is a bit more primitive, reactionary. You find yourself getting into your ego when you feel attacked, when you're short of temper, when you're really upset about something. Your ego a lot of times is what's being triggered. Your sense of self and self-preservation in particular. So let's talk about some of the characteristics of the ego. So fear and doubt. So when the ego goes into fear and doubt, that causes anxiety and it gives you that sense of limitation. Okay. Okay, this right here is a great image that describes the ego and it goes into the higher self too, but and we'll get into all that. But you can take a look at this like with the ego, we're talking about living in scarcity. For instance, look, I'm all about saving money, but sometimes you take it to a point where you don't want to spend anything. And that's living in scarcity. And you're, in a way, telling the universe, sending off the vibration of lack. And, for more reasons than one, that's not the right vibration you want to send off into the universe. Honestly, I learned this a long time ago. I used to feel like I was in competition with the world. I think that's something that social media does a great job of influencing us to think that we're in competition with everyone around us. But the truth of the matter is, you're in competition with yourself. So, first and foremost, understand that me versus me, not with the world. Okay. We'll get into the higher self stuff a little bit later, but I just wanted to make sure we could describe what ego is on this side. So let's keep talking about the ego. The ego is also very self-centered. It focuses on personal needs and validation, okay? Personal needs and validation. And that just leads to a lot of selfish behaviors, you know, where we're not really thinking about others when we take actions, not thinking about how we're all connected. Because believe it or not, a lot of these things that we may think don't affect us, that we may do to someone else, or an action we take affects someone else's life, it affects your life too indirectly. And I think we could all be more conscious about that and understand the ripple effects of our actions. Anyways, now another thing about the ego, it can be very loud and demanding. Okay. It can be really loud in your own head. Okay. Your ego can be very loud in your own mind and very demanding of you, the person that is living with this ego, but also it can show up outwardly. Right. And that can cause a lot of physical tension and emotional distress. Okay. Now, I know I'm painting the ego to be this big bad wolf, and that's because it kind of is, but it has its purpose. There's a reason why we have an ego. We do need to have some self preservation. We have to protect ourselves. We have to make sure things don't happen to us so we can actually help others and be an addition to this world. You actually have to last in it, right? So the ego does have its purpose. And we'll get to more of that in a second. But let's get into the higher self. So when we define the higher self, what do we describe the higher self as? The higher self represents your true spiritual nature. It's guided by trust, faith, and a sense of abundance. Keyword abundance. Aligning yourself, your life, with your life purpose and values. Aligning with your life purpose and values while you have that sense of abundance. Okay. So it's an all encompassing ideal here. We could jump back to this ego catcher for a second. I said ego catcher. We can jump back to this ego and higher self graphic here. We see right here that it says, I live in abundance. There's always enough. Going back to that, idea of, not like living in scarcity, is that opposite energy where you are doing other things in your life, right? To move yourself towards your higher self, your ideal self. At the same time, you're knowing because you're doing that, good things are going to come your way. So yes, don't be just, crazy and just spending your money all over the place, but you should still invest in yourself. You should still invest in others when, the opportunity is in you and you can. Because there is always enough. There is more coming, especially if you're moving in that light. I'm in harmony with the world. I love that one. You're not fighting against the world. You're moving with it almost like water. I create my own reality. Yes, I love that. You are not a victim of your circumstance. You're not a victim of reality. You create reality. You are a co-author of reality. That's something that I wish that we all understood a little bit more of, that we have a bigger part to play in the world we see. Let's take a look at the characteristics of the higher self. Trust and faith. The higher self operates from a place of trust and faith, providing a sense of calm and assurance. All right. You're believing for good reason, but you do have that reassurance within you that things will be okay because you're tapping into your higher self. You're going beyond you. The ego is more of a child where it's scared. And think of a parent dropping their kid off at school. They're not going to say, hey, by the way, we're late on the bills. Have a great day at school. Can you imagine that? It's not happening. So a parent's going to have faith and trust that they're going to figure something out to take care of their child and not put that on the kid, right? They'll be in more of a place of, even if the kid finds out they're low on money, the parents are saying something to reassure that child. Think of that as your higher self, providing that sense of calm. And we touched on this, that abundance mindset. The higher self sees the world as abundant, encouraging generosity and gratitude, both generosity and gratitude. I know the story behind a special plant called the money tree. And the money tree has like these 5 leaves, and the leaves represent our fingers. Duh. So they represent our fingers and they represent essentially our hands. They look like big hands sticking out. And the idea behind the money tree is not just, to receive money. You have to, but the idea is that you have your hand out. You have to have your hands out to receive money, right? But you also have to have your hands open the same way to give it out, right? So thinking about that generosity and that gratitude, be gracious when you receive things, also be willing to give things away and help people out. Compassionate and aligned. The higher self is concerned with the greater good and aligns decisions with spiritual values. Okay. You need to find something. Align yourself with some type of spiritual practice. It doesn't have to necessarily be a religion, but you need to ground yourself with something. Those spiritual values, those values that you have, help you aim at something. You have to aim at something. You can't be all over the place. You have to find a sense of consistency so you know where you're going. Otherwise, you'll just end up anywhere. All right, let's get into navigating success without losing your roots. That is one of the navigating success without losing your roots. Strategies to stay grounded. Okay, so your first strategy is to stay true to your values. We talked about the values. Ensure that your goals and your actions are aligned with your core values and your life purpose. So I remember thinking about how I read this book by this guy named Jordan Peterson, and I think it was the 12 Rules of Life, I believe. I think that's the name of the book. And it talked about aiming at something. And I know I brought that up previously, but I want to this helps a lot. with this particular one, staying true to your values. If you're aligned and you're aiming at something, let's say my goal is to be a data specialist. What am I then doing that allows me to become a data specialist? I have to learn different coding languages like SQL. I have to practice being a data specialist. I need to learn a little bit about statistics, get good with Excel, Google Sheets, things like that. And then what are my values? How am I going to use this ability? What should I be practicing on? Is it for social work? Is it for to help kids? Is it to give a political? Is it to help a business? Is it to help my own business? What am I doing this for? So what's the purpose? And how does that align with my values? My core values. And so my core values are expression, hard work, cooperation, collaboration. So in pursuing this data thing that I was doing, I know this is completely unrelated. I wanted to take on becoming a data specialist a few years ago, and I did achieve that goal. But it I had to lock in with my values to achieve that goal, and I did it through creative means. I did it through hard work and focused effort, and I did it through a lot of cooperation. I found ways to help people out that they weren't going to pay me, but I wanted to learn and get better. So one of the best ways of doing that is actually practice. So, anyways, let's get back to this. Staying true to your values, get back on track, and staying true to your values, your core values, and your life purpose. This helps you maintain authenticity and connection to your roots. You stay rooted when you remember what you're aiming at and why you're doing it this way, and what are your values, and what is your life purpose here, and making sure they all align helps you stay on track. Next one, practice gratitude. Ooh, man, this one's a superpower. I've heard that said so many times. Gratitude is a superpower. Gratitude is a superpower. And it is. You got to focus on those blessings in your life, no matter how small they seem. Like when things are going bad, that's actually when I tap in and I'm like, man, I'm glad I got up this morning. I'm glad I have the opportunity to even make this phone call to hear this bad news. I'm glad I could pay my phone bill to hear this bad news. But you got to find the small things. You do. You do. Because it shifts your perspective. It's a quick shift of perspective. You could be really upset about something, and then you realize all that you actually have. Complete shift of perspective. And it shifts your perspective from that scarcity mindset to that abundance mindset that you actually want. The next one, taking responsibility. Instead of blaming external factors, you have to take charge of your life. Okay? Got to take responsibility, man. Got to do it. There are external factors. There are things we can't control, but we can't be bogged down by that. We are all living through this experience. We need to take charge. The more you take charge, the more you'll realize the universe conspires a little bit for you, finds ways to help you out. Kind of create your own luck. I don't really believe in luck too much, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in another video. But anyway, taking responsibility. I mean, this mindset really empowers you to make positive changes and grow because you're learning from your mistakes. If you're not taking responsibility for anything, you're not going to learn. You might act like like, oh, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that again, but I'm not going to take responsibility. Look, man, that little, your mind, there's a mind within your mind. Your unconscious is going to see that. You can't run from that. Everyone needs to know your unconscious sees everything. And it's going to think, well, pulled a fast one. We kind of got away with that one. We didn't take responsibility. You got to reflect. You got to take responsibility. That's how you make that growth. All right, let's go into the next one. Mindfulness and meditation. Two are the same. They some people would say they're different, but I would say mindfulness is a very light meditation in a way. So regular mindfulness and meditation can really help you connect with your higher self. And this is because it provides clarity. You just take a second to be aware of yourself. Let's actually check that one out. We can look at that one. Now, this is something that we need to understand here as we talk about into our higher self. I mean, I do want to continue with the higher self, how to navigate into the higher self, but I think there's something we need to understand here. The ego is different from the higher self in a couple ways, and I touched on this earlier that you need your ego. Okay, now the ego helps us make decisions consciously, right? But the higher self is a bit unconscious. So when we talk about the meditation and being mindful, that's actually that quiet, that clarity is helping us tap into things a little bit beyond us. Okay. Ego tends to develop as we experience things, and that's why it's heavily related to our childhood in our younger times. And a lot of times it's heavily tied to our traumas. It's like that rational part of your brain. But the higher self is an aspect that we're not totally aware of. Okay. It's that spiritual touch. Okay. So we also see that the ego does have two forms, positive and negative. Okay. So if we look at it as with all things, have a positive and a negative, and we definitely need to do an episode on duality, and we'll get to that. Now, if we look at it from the positive standpoint, and positive and negative does not mean good or bad. It's just polarities. Okay. If we look at it from the positive standpoint, it allows us to make the best decision possible, for ourselves in different situations. So it's very necessary. But it can also be negative because it can control our thoughts and our actions. It make us think very selfishly, which even though we want to protect ourselves, is actually counterintuitive sometimes. When you think too selfishly, as with all things, if you go too far down that road, it ends up being a bit on the bad side. And on the other end, you know, if you're not protecting yourself, not taking care of yourself, that can cause problems as well. We just don't want to. Sometimes our ego will make us take an act of self-defense when it's not necessary. So we have to think about how they affect us. But yes, let me get back to my list. Let me get back to my list, okay? Because I tried to stay organized for you guys. I'm gonna have some tangents here and there. Now we need to talk about embracing the lessons. Oh my goodness, embrace the lessons. Embrace the lessons that you learned from mistakes. That's what life is about. The failures really make you who you are. You have to view failures as opportunities for growth. The opportunities to get better. If you never lost, how would you get better? How would you even know to get better? The best players aren't the ones that never lost. They're the ones that learn from losing. If you're not challenged, you don't grow. So this perspective helps you stay really humble too. If you take a L, you take a loss, you got to stay humble and stay focused on the personal development happening, not that you took the loss. I mean, look, it stings. Look, I'm competitive too. All right. It's not like I like to lose. But after the sting is over, which it might last for a little bit, even while the sting's happening, I'm thinking about, all right, okay, okay, I learned something there. That means I gotta do this differently. Okay, I can do better. There's some holes in my game. Okay, let's wrap this up. Trying to stay under 30 minutes. Okay, so trying to stay under 30 minutes. Maintain humility. Remember, we're talking about how we're navigating success without losing your roots. Thinking about that whole ego versus higher self. Maintaining humility when you're successful, it's tough. Success can really inflate the ego. So staying grounded by recognizing that, you see all these people out here on the street. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't have much savings. We'll talk about that. We'll get into finances and stuff on this channel too. But some people want two, three paychecks from, being out on the street. Not to say that's you, and I hope that's not you. Although it's not just being out on the street. Things happen, like we talked about. Look, you can't control the external factors. Anything can happen. So you do want to stay grounded and recognize that your circumstances can change rather quickly. Anyone's can. And true respect comes from how you handle both success and adversity. Well, I hope you guys had a good time. I'm going to end it here because I'm super out of time. This is my first video. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to be talking about more than ego and things like this. I'm going to be talking about technology. I'm going to be talking about finances. I'm going to be talking about investing. I'm going to be also talking about spiritual stuff too, metaphysics, man. Like, how are we creating this forward momentum for ourselves to create in this world? You know, I got a lot of things to talk about, so I'm excited about it. Welcome to this YouTube channel. It's called Quantum Renaissance. So I'm looking forward to the conversations, the discussions, and me out.